And next up, we have Tom Pestek from LinQuest Corporation. And thanks, Tom, for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. And Tom is going to talk to us this afternoon about web development and his experiences, as well as, sharing a little bit about how he got to be where he is and what educational requirements there are in his field. So Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, let me try to share my screen here. And I'm just going to go ahead and change this title to web development. How about that? Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint slide deck here?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. As Cassie said, I work for LinQuest Corporation. I actually work for a company called the Perduco Group, which is located in Dayton, Ohio. And we were acquired by LinQuest, a slightly larger company based out of Los Angeles, about 2 years ago. So my title is the Deputy Director of Advanced Solutions and Products within the Perduco Group. And I've been with Perduco for a bit, and over the years, my role has evolved, and I've spent the last probably 4 years leading teams and managing people that do a lot of web development, a lot of software development in general. But over the last couple of years, the vast majority of the products and prototypes that we've built have been built with web architectures and have been deployed to networks. So we can make a distinction there between, I guess, applications that are on the network or on the web, and those that could be considered more, I guess, traditional client-based application that you would run locally on a computer. You wouldn't access through a browser. So I've got prepared notes. If anyone has any questions or wants more clarification, jump in. This will be structured unless we don't want it to be. So my company, again, was founded in 2001. We were acquired in 2020. For reference, I was hired at the beginning of the year 2015. I was employee number 33. When we were sold or acquired, we were up to about 200 employees. LinQuest is about 1,600. So it's not a huge company, but much bigger than what we were used to. And our business is all around defense. So our clients are primarily the Air Force, but also the other armed services and the intelligence communities, et cetera. We really have a strong foothold in the space community as well. We build products and services, and we provide support. And that could, so what I end up talking about is a little bit more on the product side. And then, my journey, if you will, I'm an electrical engineer by education, and the first couple of years of my career, I was a government civilian, and I worked as an electrical engineer. When I was hired by Perduco, that's what I did to start. And then I think just where the company was and where I was in my career, they needed some technical project leadership. And so they tapped me to do that. So now it was a little bit more of an architecting role. It was a little bit more business development and client focused. You got to kind of hunt what you want to eat. It's not just there for you. And then as we grew, I then started to morph more into a pure manager. Then my technical contributions kind of went down. There's pros and cons to that. And then I became a director. It was funny because when we were acquired, I got promoted to deputy director, which is kind of a funny way to think about it, but much larger company. So what's a typical day like for me? And I'm not sure how many people are excited about becoming a mid-level manager. But if you are, the most important thing is you drop everything for your clients. So your best laid plans can get blown up. You have a crazy calendar, and you never really know what's going to happen. Probably your most important job is to protect your people in our industry if you're a manager, because they are your asset. Without them, you can't do anything. Trust me, managers by themselves cannot do anything. The only thing you can be assured of is uncertainty. So you really have to learn how to manage that. And many times you're not solving problems, you're choosing the least bad option. So you have to explore alternatives in order to make difficult decisions. And your day is going to consume you by being tactical, pushing buttons, pulling knobs and levers, moving things. And you can't lose sight of a strategic vision. And you kind of do that at night and on the weekend. You talk to a lot of people, but probably not as much as you should. And yeah, email just becomes overwhelming. So you got to figure out how to manage that. So who do I manage? About 50 knowledge workers. I have front-end web developers. I'd say almost half of my people, I would categorize them that way. Others that I would refer to as software engineers. We have data scientists, and then we have project leads. They could be technical project leads or more business-focused project leads. We do rapid prototyping. The idea there is, okay, it's going to be 3 to 6 months, kind of what can you do? What's the art of the possible? Sometimes we call it a proof of concept. And really what you're trying to do is convince your client that you're worth investing in long-term. Here's what we can do with just a little bit. It's a little bit more low threat for the client. We do application development. This is where, okay, by the end of this, you're going to have a product that you will use. So you might be talking at a time scale of a year, maybe 2 years. It just depends on how expansive it is. We also do analysis, and we build analysis products out of that. So especially for the intelligence communities that have a lot of data and not a lot of, they don't have enough resources to handle that. And so they turn it over to us, and we have tools, we have techniques and software, and the people, most importantly, the analysts, that can glean information that can help them make better decisions. Among these 50 people, I do have a fairly uniform distribution of kind of junior, mid, and senior. That's not a technical job description. It's a heuristic that we use when we need it. Many have computer science degrees. I'd probably say most do. We also have math and different applied mathematics degrees, engineering degrees. It can span the gamut. We have people without degrees. These people absolutely must continuously educate themselves. If they don't, they have to become a manager like me, because if you don't stay current, this industry will pass you by in a hurry. And so that's the ones that really thrive are the ones that never get complacent, that actually, in many cases, it helps if they like to learn, because it becomes less of a grind. As most, workers are, they are motivated by salary, of course, but it's not the only thing, and you'd be surprised. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's the number one thing for many people. These people are motivated by, they like to solve problems. They like to do it in a collaborative environment, a positive environment. They don't, people that are really good at things don't always they don't have a lot of tolerance for toxicity, for for a bad environment, because they're trying to get to work, and they are motivated by a good work-life balance. So as a manager and as a company, if we provide these things, you get happy employees and loyal employees, and everyone enjoys. It's just a pleasant place to be. So a typical day for my team is very different from mine. They probably spend about 80% of their day making individual contributions to a product, architecting code, writing code, reviewing code, researching, if they're a data scientist, running simulations. It's very lean in terms of how much of the day goes towards the end product versus being kind of encumbered by the business. That's kind of the job of the manager, is to try to deal with a lot of that. Everyone generally meets, because most people are on teams. They have what we call a stand-up or a daily stand-up. Some people call it a scrum. It's meant to be short, sometimes 5 minutes, 15 to 30 at the most. And it's where your core team is going to meet to discuss anything that's impeding your progress, maybe an area where you could use some help. It's just a tag up. So that alone, should indicate that, there's a lot of movies and tropes about what it's like to be a coder or a web developer in a knowledge industry. But the industry itself for the last 20 years, all of the cultural momentum has been around cutting out the fat and letting the problem solvers solve problems, while understanding that everyone can't just go off on their own and not, collaborate and tag up. And then, these people have clients. And so at least about once a week, you're going to be discussing progress with your clients in one way or the other. All right. Now this is in some ways my interpretation based on my experience. Your mileage may vary. There are so many titles in this industry. Some of them are slightly made up, some of them aren't, but it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I think the number one thing that I want to stress is that if you graduate with, say, a degree in computer science or computer engineering, electrical engineering, different types of information systems, you could become any one of these, really. These are roles. They're not necessarily, and you could be, in 1 year, you could be a backend developer, and the next year you could be a DevOps engineer. There is movement between these, but from my point of view, some of these are more meaningful than others. Software engineer, I generally only use that term if someone has a computer science or engineering degree. So I use it a lot in our field because we have a lot of people like that. Software architect is much more specific in terms of that's the role that you are in. So you are the authority on the application or the code base. You're probably very senior and well respected amongst your peers. You're going to be writing less individual code, and you're going to be reviewing more code. If you're a software developer, you are part of the engine. You are writing a lot of code. Your velocity is very important, and the quality of your code. We're not asking you to do much more than that. It's very important. These are junior and mid-level people and some senior level people that's what they love to do, and that's what they want to do. And there are opportunities to stay in that vein. You don't have to grow up and become, a project lead or anything like that. Now, web developer. So sometimes when you see this as a job application or something like that, it's, the company has a front-facing website or offers web services. And so you're going to be a part of that team, and you will probably work on a specific area of that web application. When you probably see it in more of a collegiate setting, it's making a distinction from probably traditional computer science, where you really have to have this broad focus. Web developer can be a little bit more pointed around things like JavaScript and front-end development and these emerging tools and technologies. It can be so I would say, a computer scientist can very quickly or right out of the gate be a very good web developer. A web developer might struggle to be like an embedded developer. They may not have learned those skills if they went to and got a degree in web development, or went and did a certification or one of these boot camps, which some of these are really good for web development. So you have to want to do that. If you're more unsure, I just love to code, and you're good at it, you may want, when you're investing in your own education, to be a little bit more broad and specialize in one area. Now, when we get into things like front end, back end, full stack, DevOps, these are used a lot. And again, they're somewhat, front end developer and web developer in some cases are a little bit interchangeable. You're working on the front end of a web application or an architecture that is web enabled. You can be assured that you will probably be writing in JavaScript. And nowadays you'll be using a JavaScript framework like React or Angular. We use React here at Purdueco. If you're a backend developer, chances are you were a computer scientist or a computer engineer. You're very good at problem solving. you either aren't very good or you don't like design and user-facing experiences, you're optimizing what's under the hood of these web applications. Um, I'm speaking in platitudes, so there's room for a lot of movement here. Full stack developer, I almost laugh when I see this because it is a real thing. However, there is so much to know and to specialize in that sometimes a full stack developer, you really want to think of them as they're probably an expert or a master in some area of the stack, and they have experience or know enough about all the pieces that are required to make it work. It's almost impossible anymore to have a role where you're writing you're setting up the DevOps, the infrastructure, you're writing the backend code, you're setting up the APIs. Oh, and you're architecting the front end. Oh, and you're doing the CSS and styling. Probably not. That's why you have a team. So full stack developer, I joke, this is what you call yourself to make more money. It's basically like, hey, I can do everything. And companies on the other side sometimes ask for everything. You read these job descriptions and they're overwhelming. Like, what kind of unicorn do you think I am that I can do all of these things? The reality is, people like me, recruiters, we're not always looking for all of those things. That's a best case scenario. We dream big when we come up with these job descriptions. And I'll get into like what makes a successful web developer, knowledge worker. So don't ever be overwhelmed if you're like, well, I don't even know what this means. And that's included in this massive palette of responsibilities, because I've very rarely seen anyone at any given time working on the whole stack. I mean, yes, well, people that have ascended and have worked really hard, I would consider full stack, but that takes some time. DevOps engineers, this is becoming much more important and powerful. Software is getting more complicated and there's more pieces, and so it's not as ad hoc anymore as it used to be. Students out there, if you ever go play like a retro video game and you beat it and you watch the credits, you'll be amazed. There's like 10 to 15 people that worked on that. Now it's like watching a AAA movie. I mean, it's like 20 minutes to get through the thousands of people that worked on these video games and these applications. I mean, big companies, they have thousands of developers that could work on the same application. So you need process, you need a factory of sorts. In order to have this all be a well-oiled machine, you need a lot of tooling and automation to make that happen, to be efficient. And a DevOps engineer, that's what they would focus on. IT is a little different. These are company overhead supporting functions. You're probably familiar with them. You probably have them at your schools. People that, if they're help desk, they fix people's problems when a computer dies or something like that, or someone needs a new account. Then you've got infrastructure, the people that make sure the overall network infrastructure is sufficient and the tooling is there so that everyone else can do their job. And that's no different at a company like ours. I also have data scientists and data engineers. They are generally have degrees in applied math. They have a strong background in things like that. They're probably on the cutting edge of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and they can take a lot of data and make sense of it. Lastly, you've got terms like embedded and cloud. Embedded means you're working with hardware, low-level languages. You probably were a computer scientist or a computer engineer if that's what you end up doing. And then cloud can mean a lot of different things. I tend to think of it as, okay, well, then there's probably something that's scalable and distributed where your tooling is going to live and execute. And that could be Amazon Web Services, it could be Microsoft Azure, it could be Google Cloud, or other things like that. Time check. Okay, I can go a little faster. So what do I value? What do we value? People that are highly effective at learning. You don't just master something and then that works forever. I mean, that could be out of style within a couple of years. New tools come out, new best practices emerge. So to stay at the forefront, people in this industry have to be effective at learning. And it really helps if they like learning. People that are clever problem solvers, very rarely is the solution obvious. Sometimes it is, and it's about deliberate habit forming and following best practices, standing on the shoulders of giants. But quite often, there's some dynamics at play where it really helps to have people that can solve problems. And along those lines, people that are innovative and really motivated to add value, that are always looking, say, how can I make this better? How can I be a better teammate? How could I improve our relationship with this client? People that don't get complacent with like, I've got a job to do, I'm going to do it, and that's it. And are always trying to think about just how can I be valuable to my team, to this organization, in a variety, you can do that in a variety of ways. That's very valuable to me. People that are reliable. It's hard enough to manage in a fast moving industry. It's harder when your people aren't reliable. So that is both technically and professionally. It's better to know what you can get out of someone than to necessarily for them to have like, well, they can really dominate in some areas, and sometimes it's just we're getting nothing out of them. It's nice to have some certainty that you can build and plan around. And then professionally, you want to be able to trust people. And that gets into high character is very important, because people that aren't high character, in some cases that's gonna catch up to you over time. You want to be working with people that do the right thing, when no one's looking, that are good teammates, that relish a team win versus an individual win. All right. So this last one, this is, I guess, advice, and then any questions anyone has. Don't be misled. Talent is very important here, but I've seen, this industry is littered with very talented people that got complacent, and it's full of motivated people that just decided that this is what they wanted to do, and formal education wasn't as important, but being focused and being deliberate and really committing to learning and doing, over time, you can become very good. I think it's a relatively easy industry to get into, which is good and bad. Anymore, a degree adds certainty, but it's not necessarily needed. There's many ways to add value. Like you saw that list of all those different things. I mean, those are all real. So, there's a whole phrase, software is eating the world. In some ways, it's true. So there's not only one way to go about doing things. We have people that are graphics designers that decided to kind of take the next step, and I'm going to learn to code. I'm not just going to create the concept art. And boom, now you've got a budding front-end developer. And a year or two later, they're almost mastered it. So there's lots of ways to get into this. That said, it could be a little bit crowded. It's in high demand. There's a lot of people doing it. So maybe if you're like the DevOps engineer, you're kind of critical and the only game in town. Web development, front-end engineer, there's a lot. So you need to try to separate yourself from the pack. And expectations can be high. Managers are the worst. We just assume everything should always work and be intuitive. And well, if you could do this in a month, I'm sure you could do that in 2 months, right? Like a lot of uninformed optimism from people that don't build software. And that can be frustrating. That it's like, wow, why isn't it done yesterday? And it's like, because it's hard and there's a lot going on. And then the last thing is you have to evolve and you have to stay current, which, I mean, that's challenging. Not everyone's up for that. Some people want to, I put in my time. I got good at this. I mean, come on. It's like, why do I went to school for a million years. You're telling me basically I'm always going to be in school? Well, not necessarily, but you do need to keep up and stay current. You may enjoy this and not know it. I got a list here. If you like creating things, if you have good deductive and logic skills, if you're competitive, but in a good way, not a selfish way, but just you like to challenge yourself. If you enjoy deep work, like you could just sit and do the same thing for a long time until it's just right, you might enjoy web development. You might enjoy software development. And if you like sharing, it's a very collaborative culture and industry. If you look, hey, look what I made. Oh, I mean, it's people don't do as well when they're very protective of their creations and ideas and implementations. This is all my opinion. You may not enjoy this if it's very frustrating when you get stuck on something, and it's just like after a certain point, you're like, okay, calling in a favor, someone help. Like, why is this not working? Because that happens a lot. If you like being outside, I would not take a career in this because you're just at a keyboard all day. And if you like a lot of multitasking, you might be better off being a manager. Then you really need to focus and go deep to solve these problems. And you may be working on one part of one application for a long time, and that's very important. And that may start to get stale. Here's probably the most important thing I'd say, because I interview so many people that are fresh out of college and they have a computer science degree and they've got their resume and they show me, what they did in their senior project, and they say something like, why, and I say, well, why'd you decide to do this? Well, I've always liked computers. I always liked video games. And, I just think it's cool. Or I like graphic design and I'd like to make websites and all this stuff. And then it's like, well, show me your GitHub. Show me, why didn't you bring your laptop? Like, pull up your laptop and show me something cool. And they don't have it. And the reality sets in that it's like, they decided to go into this, but this isn't what they do in their free time. If you will excel in this industry, if when you're not working or no one's paying you, you want to write code, you want to be an ethical hacker, you want to modify some hardware that you have. If you really geek out about stuff like that, you will love this industry because you will be paid to solve problems, and you will just accumulate so much knowledge from your passion that it'll be fun. It won't be very frustrating for you. So you go to that first job interview, demonstrate, show off, show the passion. That's more important than, honestly, in my opinion, the senior project that you were on or whatever. So looks like I ran right up to the clock, totally by design, to avoid any questions. But no, I stick around.
You don't get that. You don't get out that easy, Tom.
Okay. Oh, good. I cleared my calendar. So.
No, yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you, most importantly, for the advice at the end. I think that's the most valuable piece of this is really encouraging students to show their passion and to really show that this is the right field for me. So, Patty, do you have any questions for Tom?
I did not get any through here, but everything you covered was so informative, especially explaining the differences between the different terminologies and different items of the different careers. That was really beneficial. And then your advice for interviewing and being prepared. That is something that nobody else has covered through our series. I think you're the number 15. And so those two things have been very valuable. I know a lot of people were taking notes and screenshots of that. So we truly appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing I'll add to that is we've had really phenomenal success hiring students that we had as interns. And it's really win-win. Obviously, as an intern, you don't make a lot of money, but you learn things about the company, about the industry. You really see software in a professional setting. In classes, you may have a team project, but I mean, these are team efforts, and we're using modern tools. And so you gain those experiences. And at the same time, we get this kind of low threat opportunity to view what you can do. And we recognize, you're kind of a dual threat here, and that you're focusing on school as well. So we have a lot more patience. but pretty much everyone that we've had as an intern that has showed us talent and potential, we hired, and then it was like off to the races. There was not this 6-month kind of feeling out period. It was like, well, you already know us, we already know you. I would highly recommend anyone interested in any kind of software focused to take an internship. I mean, even if it's like, I will work for almost nothing, just I want the experience. It will pay off. It really will. I would avoid an internship, just for salary or money's sake, if it's not going to jumpstart you in your career. I really believe that. And you just want to have a good situation, because you can't get burned out. You really want to be upfront with your employer about what you can handle. Hey, I can do 10 hours a week. I can do 12 hours a week. I'll do 40 over the summer, whatever. Be in a good situation so that expectations are set and managed. And it can really complement all the fundamentals that you learn in school that they don't, that companies aren't going to, they're just focused on the product, and so it's a really nice complement between, you gain all these fundamentals, and you learn the underlying concepts and computer science fundamentals. And if you're taking something in web development, you get really good guidance on how to use these tools. And then, but yeah, I can't recommend a good internship enough.
That's perfect, Tom, because that's typically our last question is, how do you get experience? And that's the way to do it for sure. So thank you very much for spending your time with
welcome.
us this afternoon, and sharing your experience and your advice. And obviously we had students and teachers participate today and get the value of the presentation. But we'll have many more students and teachers who will watch this in the future and get the benefit as well. So appreciate you and your time. And
welcome.
thank you everyone for being with us today. And we'll have our last webinar next week, same time, same location. And we look forward to seeing everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.